What's good, y'all? Back with another video. If you don't know who I am, my name is Joe Chea. I'm a New York-based freelance photographer, videographer, and studio owner. Coming to you live from Come Uptown Studios in the South Bronx, New York City, uptown. This episode, or today's video, is going to be super important. Super important for those of you that are thinking about getting into film, those of you that have already gotten into film, and those of you that just don't know what's the best option in terms of scanning your images, because let's be honest, film is extremely expensive right now, and we all need a way to save some coin, like for real. Everything is a shortage. There's a chip shortage, there's a food shortage. I mean, I'm short, everything's short. So we need to figure out a way to cut costs on our creative endeavors, and what better way than to scanning your own film. Here in New York City, scanning, to get a roll of film developed and scanned from somewhere like Color House or the small darkroom, you're looking at roughly $20 to $35 a roll if you're going with high-res TIFFs. And let's be honest, if you're taking the time out to get a model, get a hairstylist, wardrobe stylist, makeup artist, you're not just gonna shoot one roll. You're gonna end up shooting anywhere between 2 and 10, depending on how passionate you are about the project. So it only makes sense that we don't want to spend $250 plus developing film. So today's episode is going to be focusing on which one is better, scanning on a flatbed scanner or mirrorless scanning / DSLR scanning. Today in the mail, sorry about the beeping, the Bronx. But today I actually got a book from an acquaintance of mine, Chloe Dulce. I can't pronounce the last name. Sorry about that, but it's Chloe Dulce on social media. She reached out to me last year and asked me if I would be able to make some images for some portraits for her new book that was coming down the pipeline. She told me what the budget was and told me what the actual vision was for the book, which is to create a book of intimate stories from Black women regarding motherhood, self-identity, healing, and self-trust. So we struck a deal, and I was able to go out and make 2 different portrait sessions for her. One from Julie Wilson, who is a beauty editor at Cosmo magazine. And the other set of photos was for Kima Safir, who is the founder and editor-in-chief at Hannah magazine. Both women are prominent here in New York City, and they are contributors to the highest form in the writing space for women of color. So it was a pleasure doing that. So because we're going through this experiment today of figuring out which one is better, flatbed scanning or DSLR mirrorless scanning, why not take this opportunity to scan in some of the unreleased film photos I took from that session, those 2 sessions with Chloe and Julie. So here we are. Let's get right into it. We'll go into the pros and cons from my perspective, and then I'll give you guys the rundown on how I scan my images, right? Some people are asking me like, yo, do you think it would be wise for you to share how you scan your images, considering I offer film development and scanning as a service here at Come Uptown Studios? And the honest to God truth is that some people can afford to do it and some people can't, and who am I to pigeonhole the information? I had to learn this on my own, but I did it so you won't have to. All right, so here are my pros and cons. I have an Epson V600 scanner. You guys might have seen this from my beginning to end DF96 video. I'll link it up here. This was my first experience with scanning, and honestly, it was cool. It was cool. It was efficient. I didn't have a problem with it until I realized how slow it actually was. I mean, a slug is fast until you see a snake slither, right? You never really know. After lots of YouTube University and studying and trial and error, I stumbled across the mirrorless scanning method, which requires you to have a macro lens, which can tend to be a tad bit pricey depending on what options you go with. A light table, which might not be visible to you guys, but this is the light table. In the camera of your choice. Considering you guys know that I am a portrait photographer and I work in the digital medium, I had most of this stuff already. So it wasn't really much of an expense. Where it did tend to get a little bit expensive was when I had to figure out which adapters worked best for my processing of the scanning. And we'll get into that later. So pros and cons, like I said. The Epson is slower. For the price, I don't think I paid any more than like $250 for this thing. For the price, it's actually amazing. Its weak points is scanning 35mm film, which is what I came into film development with, and I needed to find another solution. It does really well with 120 film, which is what we'll be scanning today, but it's still just slow. So I guess pros are ease of use, great with 120, and easy to learn. The cons for this are gonna be slow, not great with 35mm film, and kind of limited in terms of what you can do. The reason why I say it's limited is because unless you go out and buy a super expensive piece of anti-Newton ring glass, you're gonna be missing out on the experience of having your borders from your film on your scans, because these scanning trays that come with it, when you put the film inside of it, it actually blocks the border information so that it can have a tight hold on the film. So yeah, limited. But now when we get to the mirrorless scanning, it has its own pros and cons, right? Pros are super fast, higher resolution, but the resolution is dependent on the camera you're using, the digital camera you're using. If you are working as a photographer in a professional capacity, you may have most of the things that you need. So it's like, another pro is that everything is at the tip of your fingertips, I guess. I don't know if I'm stumbling over my words, but that's cool because I'm human. But yeah, everything is at your fingertips if you are a professional photographer. If not, it could be very pricey. So that's the first con. Another con is having to figure out how to do the focusing. Because we are scanning film, and film, just like digital, the images can be out of focus at times. Learning how to spot and how to like hone in on your focusing when doing DSLR mirrorless scanning, it could take some getting used to, so it gets a little difficult. The file sizes on these are substantially larger too, but that's not necessarily a con if you're looking to present your work in a large-scale manner, right? Maybe you want to do prints. Maybe you're not looking to do darkroom prints. But here's what we'll do. We'll scan film. We'll scan the same 2 or 3 images from the set of images with Chea, and we will compare them side by side. So we'll do scanning on the Epson V600, and we'll do scanning on the Sony A7R IV with the Sigma 105 2.8 macro lens. All of these images were made with my trusty Pentax 6.7. And let's see. You guys will be able to tell me at the end of the video which one you think is the stronger image or the lesser image. Let's go. So because the Epson is, I think, the easier option for people that are just now venturing into scanning their own film, I think that's what we'll start with now. First things first, you need to make sure that you have the proper software. So you can go with ViewScan, or you can go with Epson Scan, Epson Scan 2, I believe it is. So make sure that you download Epson Scan 2 from the Epson software portion of their website, and then you can jump into this next section. So the process is as follows. Got to make sure that you have your film holder. You got to also make sure that you have a rocket blower, right? Rocket blower is super important because you never want to scan film with dust on it. It kind of does the film a disservice, and then you find yourself having to go into the process multiple times just to get the proper scan. Keep a rocket blower with you. Make sure you rocket blow your film every single time you're taking it, putting it onto the flatbed and closing down the actual top of the flatbed. The other vital part of the program is going to be your lint-free cotton gloves. The reason why you need this is because your film is cellulose or cellulite, cellulose, piece of plastic that holds on to The reason why you need these gloves is because your film is made of cellulose and they hold on to body like oils and stuff. So you don't want to touch it with your bare hand and leave an oil print on there because it'll be like hell getting it off. And if you do get it off, you might end up destroying your negative. So first things first is we're going to choose which set of photos we want to scan. And I'm going to go with the middle ones because these are the images of Chea and her daughter sitting on the stairs of their Brooklyn stoop. So here we are. We have the film, and next steps are going to be to take it and put it onto our film holder. So now it's super important that you know you got to take it and you got to put it upside down because it's going to invert it when you use the software. So you take it, you place it into the spot, you make sure that the image is not being covered by the holder, and then you lower down the holder. You snap it in place, then you're safe to go ahead and put it onto your flatbed. So where our rocket blower comes into place, you rocket blow your film front and back, you rocket blow your flatbed and the transparency unit, and then you place the film holder in its respective spot, and you lower it down. I guess now you understand why I said it was such an easy experience so far, right? Because once you get it in there properly, there's not much else to it. So next steps are going to be that you open your Epson Scan 2, and what's going to happen is the software is automatically going to detect your scanner, which for me is my V600, and you go ahead and select your settings. So for this experiment, and for what I do whenever I'm using my V600, is I make sure that I'm selecting my transparency unit as opposed to scanner glass, because your transparency unit is gonna show the scans of the negatives completely, as opposed to the scanner glass looking like a photocopy. The document type is going to be color positive film because I'm using a plugin in my workflow that allows me to convert my negatives into positives on my own so that I can get the best possible effects. Now, for sake of this video, we're going to do 24-bit color, but what I typically do is 48-bit color. The DPI, meaning the dots per inch or pixels per inch, which relates directly to your resolution of the photo, how large it scans and the quality of it. For this, you can go up to 2400 on the V600 without it looking shabby. So we'll do 2400 for this experiment, and we'll go ahead and we'll select our scanner quality to high. So next step is that you make sure that you're using the professional format. So we're not going to do JPEG because we're not doing this for play. We're doing this for professionals. So you're going to hit TIFFs, which is the highest quality scan that you can get. The name is important, and I'm just going to make sure that I am selecting where I want my scans to go. So I select, and then I'm going to make sure that it goes to my Samsung drive. So this is going to be called YouTube Test Scans. Boom. YouTube Test Scans, we'll make another folder, and this will be V600. So now we're ready to go. First things first, we're going to select a preview scan. While we're doing our preview scan, our Epson or our scanner is going to sound like an old Dreamcast. It's going to make noise. It's going to take time. For the first image, I guess, or for the first step of this process, I'll actually go ahead and let you guys see my screen and do this in real time so you guys can understand why I say it takes so long. One thing I don't do is the thumbnail option, because the thumbnail option limits. As you can see, this has cut our images into half. This is a single image that is cut into two because the software thinks it's smarter than it actually is. Let's allow ourselves to make those selections as opposed to the software. So we're going to click off the thumbnail option. It's going to ask us, it's going to change the preview mode. It's going to ask us, do we want to continue? We select yes. Luckily for us, it did not revert back to the blank page and we had the preview scan again. So we're here. This is what our transparency unit sees. We're going to go ahead and we're going to select it. So when you hover over your transparency or your negative, it's going to give you the option to click and drag. And when you click and drag, you want to click and drag to cover the majority of the image. So I'm going to select a little bit more than what I actually need to make sure that we don't miss out on anything. In this, you can already see what part of my gripe is with using the Epson scanner is that we are currently like missing our borders, and I actually feel like I'm kind of missing this side of the actual image, but that's neither here nor there. What we're gonna do is scan all three of the images. So we're gonna go ahead and select all three of the images and those with those settings that I just kind of like walked you guys through. So we're gonna scan a little bit more than what we need. And you should see that the image will get a little darker once it's properly highlighted. Just like the software letting you know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's very finicky, and this is another reason why my go-to is what it is, but we'll get into that later. So we'll go ahead and we'll select the third image. Boom. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna select this, select all. We'll click all three, and now you see they're marching ants around all three of the images. So that means they're ready to go. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead, we'll hit scan, and the software will begin. Again, the Epson scan starts to sound like an old school PlayStation or Dreamcast, and from there, we wait, right? Do I have a stopwatch on this Apple Watch here? We wait. We're scanning number one, and for the first scan, so first image is scanned, and I would say that took like close to a minute. I won't bore you guys with watching a paint dry for these next two, so we'll fast forward and we'll skip straight through to the next part. We'll jump into our DSLR scanning.